You know that feeling, right? It's 7 per day a.m. The kitchen is completely quiet, and you hear that familiar gurgle of the coffee pot.
Yeah, the best sound of the day.
Right. And the smell hits you first. Roasty, earthy, just promising. For millions of us, that first cup isn't just a beverage. It's practically a structural load-bearing pillar of our entire day.
Yeah, it's the on button.
Exactly. But have you ever stopped mid-sip and wondered, is this just waking me up for the next hour, or is it actually doing something deeper, like looking out for me 20, 30, or 40 years down the road?
It's the classic question, really. We usually think of caffeine as borrowed energy, like a short-term loan against our sleep bank.
Right, alone with high interest sometimes.
Definitely. But there is a growing body of evidence suggesting it might be more like um, a long-term investment in our neural architecture.
And that is exactly why I'm so excited about the stack of papers we have for this deep dive today. We aren't just looking at some small survey done on 20 college students during finals week.
No, not at all.
We are digging into a massive piece of research. It's titled Caffeine Consumption and Long-Term Cognitive Health Protection. When I say massive, I mean the scale of this thing just blew my mind.
It really is impressive. To give you the specific numbers, this study covers 131,821 participants.
Wow.
Yeah. And they didn't just check in on them for a week or a month. We are talking about follow-up periods lasting up to 43 years.
43 years. I mean, think about that. That's an entire career.
Yes.
That's raising kids until they have their own kids. Tracking what people drink for that long is just wild to me.
It really creates a data set that is incredibly rare in nutritional science. Usually you get a snapshot, like what did you eat yesterday?
Right, which I can barely remember anyway.
Exactly. But this allows us to see actual patterns over a lifetime.
Okay, so here is our mission for this deep dive. We're going to cut through all those conflicting headlines you see. You know, the ones, coffee is great, coffee is
The
terrible.
whiplash is real.
It really is. So we are going to answer one specific high-stakes question. Does that morning ritual protect your brain from dementia and cognitive decline as you age?
And the answer is absolutely fascinating. It involves looking at the difference between caffeinated and decaf.
Oh, we are definitely getting into the decaf debate.
We have to. And finding the absolute sweet spot for how much you should drink and looking at the hard statistics on dementia risk.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start with the sheer scope of this data because I feel like that's what gives the study its weight. You mentioned 131,000 people. Who are they?
So the researchers actually pooled data from two of the most famous cohorts in medical history.
Okay.
First, you have the Nurses' Health Study, or NHS. This started back in 1980 with 86,606 female participants.
Okay, so a huge group of women right off the bat.
Exactly. And then the second group is the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, the HPFS. That added 45,250 male participants, and that data started in 1986.
And I assume the fact that they are nurses and health professionals is actually pretty relevant here.
It is huge. Health professionals tend to be very good at reporting data accurately. They understand the importance of filling out medical forms correctly.
That makes sense.
And what's really critical here is the baseline health. At the very start of this study, none of these 131,000 people had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or dementia.
Zero.
Zero. They were starting from a completely clean slate, cognitively speaking.
Which is crucial, right? Because if someone already had memory issues, they might change their diet, and that would mess up the data.
Precisely. It avoids what we call reverse causation. And here's the other methodological detail that really matters. They didn't just ask about coffee once.
Right.
They collected data on dietary intake every 2 to 4 years using validated food frequency questionnaires.
See, that is the part that really impressed me, because my coffee habits have definitely changed over 40 years. If you asked me when I was 20 versus now, you would get totally different answers.
Right. By asking every few years, they capture the movie of your diet, not just a Polaroid snapshot. They can track cumulative exposure.
The movie of your diet. I like that.
So when they say someone's a high coffee consumer, they know that person has been consistent over decades, not just during a stressful week back in 1995.
Okay, so we have a massive, reliable group of people tracked over decades. Let's get to the part everyone is waiting for, the headline finding. Does coffee actually save your brain?
Well, save might be a strong word, but protect. The data certainly points that way. Let's look at the primary outcome first, which is dementia.
Okay.
Over that median follow-up period of nearly 37 years, there were 11,033 cases of incident dementia recorded in this whole group.
Which is a really sobering number just in general.
It is. It shows the sheer prevalence of the issue as populations age. But when researchers overlaid the coffee drinking habits onto that data, a clear pattern emerged. Higher caffeinated coffee intake was significantly associated with a lower dementia risk.
Significant in a statistical sense, or significant in a I should brew another pot right now sense.
Both, arguably. Let's break down the hazard ratio. They compared the people in the fourth quartile, so the highest consumers, to the people in the first quartile, the lowest consumers. The hazard ratio was 0.82.
Okay, for those of us who skipped Statistics 101, what does 0.82 actually mean in real life?
Sure. Think of 1.0 as no difference at all. Anything below 1.0 means a reduction in risk. So a 0.82 translates to roughly an 18% lower risk of developing dementia for the high intake group compared to the low intake group.
An 18% reduction, I mean, that's not nothing. That's actually pretty substantial when you're talking about a disease with no cure.
Absolutely. To put it in absolute numbers, in the high intake group, they saw 141 cases per 100,000 person years.
Okay.
But in the low intake group, that number jumped to 330 cases.
Wow, so 141 versus 330, that really puts it in perspective.
Yes, the contrast is stark.
But, dementia is a clinical diagnosis. What about just feeling sharper? Because sometimes I feel like my brain is declining just trying to remember where I left my car keys. Did they look at that kind of everyday forgetfulness?
They did, actually. That's the secondary outcome they measured, called subjective cognitive decline.
Subjective meaning just how the person feels.
Exactly. This is basically asking people, do you feel like your memory is getting worse? Do you have trouble following group conversations? They use a scoring scale from 0 to 7, where higher scores mean you feel like you are struggling more.
How did the coffee drinkers do?
The coffee drinkers won again. The prevalence of subjective decline was 7.8% in the high coffee drinkers versus 9.5% in the low coffee drinkers.
So not only are they getting diagnosed with dementia less often, but they also just feel less foggy day to day.
Exactly. The subjective experience completely aligns with the clinical stats, which really strengthens the finding. It suggests the protection is noticeable in daily life, not just on a doctor's chart decades later.
Okay, but here's where I get skeptical.
Okay, let's hear it.
Is it the caffeine? Or is it just that coffee is a bean and beans have antioxidants and polyphenols and all that good plant stuff? Because if it's just the bean, I could switch to decaf and probably sleep a lot better.
This is where this study really shines, to be honest. A lot of previous research just lumped coffee into one big bucket. But because this data set is so massive and detailed, they could actually separate the caffeinated drinkers from the decaf drinkers.
The critical distinction. What happened with the decaf group?
Nothing.
Wait, nothing.
Nothing at all. Decaffeinated coffee intake was not associated with lower dementia risk or better cognitive performance. The line was completely flat.
Whoa, so if I am drinking decaf thinking I'm doing my brain a favor, I am mostly just drinking hot brown water, at least in terms of dementia risk.
In the context of this specific study and dementia risk, yes.
That is wild.
It is a massive clue. It strongly suggests that the protective mechanism is linked specifically to the caffeine content, or perhaps how caffeine interacts with the other compounds, rather than just the antioxidants found in the bean itself.
That is fascinating. It isolates the variable perfectly. It's the stimulant that seems to be doing the heavy lifting here.
It raises some really interesting questions about the biological mechanism, which the study doesn't fully answer, but the correlation is stark. No caffeine, no reduced risk.
Okay, so that is bad news for the decaf crowd. But what about the tea drinkers? I have friends who wouldn't touch coffee with a 10-foot pole, but they steep Earl Grey like it's a religion. Are they invited to the brain protection party?
They absolutely are. The study found very similar associations for tea.
Really?
Yes, higher intake of tea correlated with the exact same cognitive outcomes. Lower dementia risk, better cognitive function, the same benefits we saw in the coffee drinkers.
Which, again, points right back to our friend caffeine.
Exactly. Since tea and coffee are chemically quite different in terms of their specific antioxidants and oils, the fact that both provide this benefit really reinforces the idea that caffeine is the common denominator here. It's the thread tying all these results together.
So we have established that caffeine seems to be the hero of this story. But now comes the really practical question.
Hello?
Yeah. If caffeine is good, is more caffeine better? Should I be hooking myself up to an espresso IV drip?
I would strongly advise against the IV drip.
Fair enough.
And the data backs me up on that too. This is one of the most important nuances in the whole study. The relationship isn't a straight line where more coffee equals more brain power forever.
It's not. I feel like my mornings disagree.
I know the feeling.
Mm.
But no, they found a nonlinear inverse association.
Okay, translate nonlinear inverse association for us.
Think of a U shape, or rather a curve that goes down and then flattens out. The risks go down, meaning the benefits ramp up
Hmm.
as you go from 0 cups to a moderate amount,
Right.
but then they plateau. And in some cases, the benefits might even decrease slightly if you get to extreme levels of consumption.
So there is a sweet spot. What is the magic number?
For caffeinated coffee, the most pronounced difference, that peak protection, was observed at approximately 2 to 3 cups per day.
2 to 3 cups. That is remarkably normal.
It really is. It's a very standard consumption habit.
Yeah.
You have a cup in the morning, maybe a refill, maybe one right after lunch. That seems to be the zone where the brain thrives.
And what about for the tea drinkers?
The optimal level there was approximately 1 to 2 cups per day.
That's interesting. Tea usually has less caffeine than coffee, so I wonder why the cup count is lower.
It's a great question. It could be differences in how the caffeine in tea is metabolized, or perhaps the other compounds in tea, like L-theanine, work synergistically with the caffeine, so you just don't need as much volume to get the effect.
That makes a lot of sense.
But the takeaway is clear either way.
Mm-hmm.
Moderate intake is key. You don't need to become a super consumer to get the maximum benefit.
I love that. It validates my second cup of coffee, but it also tells me I don't need the fifth one.
Exactly. Save yourself the jitters.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. We talked about subjective decline, how people felt their memory was holding up. But did the study actually test them? Make them do math problems or memory games? Because I can feel like a genius after 3 espressos, but that doesn't mean I am one.
That is a very fair point, and yes, they did actually test them. Specifically, in the nurses' health study cohort, they used a tool called the TICS. That stands for the Telephone Interview for Cognitive Status.
A telephone interview, so they just call them up and quiz them.
Essentially, yes. It's a standardized set of neuropsychological tests adapted for the phone. It tests memory, attention, language objective measures of how the brain is actually firing.
And how did the coffee drinkers do on the phone test?
They scored better. Higher caffeinated coffee intake was associated with a higher mean TICS score. The mean difference was 0.11.
Okay, 0.11 sounds kind of small. Is that a meaningful difference?
In the world of cognitive decline, where changes happen very slowly over years and years, even small shifts in mean scores across a huge population are significant. It indicates a preservation of function at scale.
Got it.
They also looked at a global cognition score, which combines results from 6 different cognitive tests.
And did that match up?
The trend was the same. Higher scores for coffee drinkers. The mean difference there was 0.02. Now, I have to put on my rigorous expert hat for a second and note that the p-value for that specific global cognition score was 0.06.
Okay, which means nearly statistically significant, but not quite.
Right. In science, we usually look for a p-value less than 0.05 to call it statistically significant. So 0.06 is right on the borderline.
Close, but no cigar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you view it in the context of the really strong dementia data and the TR scores, it aligns completely with the overall picture. The arrow's pointing in the same direction, even if that specific data point wasn't a slam dunk on its own.
So we have lower clinical dementia rates, better subjective feelings of clarity, and objective test scores that lean towards better performance. That is a pretty sturdy 3-legged stool.
It is. And remember, this is all compared to people who don't drink caffeine. The contrast between the groups is what really matters.
This is honestly just so validating for my morning routine, but I do want to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
We are talking about an observational study. You mentioned earlier the difference between association and causation. Can we say for absolutely sure that the coffee is causing the brain protection? Or is it possible that people with healthy brains just happen to like coffee?
That is the million-dollar question in epidemiology. You are entirely right. This is observational. We aren't taking people, locking them in a lab for 40 years, and force-feeding half of them espresso.
As fun as that sounds.
Right. We can prove association, not direct cause and effect.
Because maybe people who are naturally healthier just have the physical energy to get up, go to the kitchen, and make coffee.
That's possible. Or maybe people who start developing early, subtle dementia symptoms, naturally stop drinking coffee because it makes them feel jittery or anxious as their brain chemistry changes. That is what we call reverse causality.
Oh, interesting. So the disease stops the coffee habit, not the other way around.
Exactly. Now, the researchers tried very hard to account for that. Remember, they excluded anyone who had dementia at the start of the study. And the extremely long follow-up of 40 years helps minimize that reverse causality risk.
Because you'd see the drop-off way earlier.
Right. But we always have to be careful with observational data. However, when you see a clear dose-response relationship, where a specific amount, like 2 to 3 cups, correlates with a specific benefit, and you see biological plausibility because caffeine is a known stimulant affecting the central nervous system, the case for a genuine protective effect gets much, much stronger.
It's not 100% proof, but it's very strong evidence.
Exactly. It is the best evidence we can practically get without a 40-year clinical trial, which is basically impossible to run.
So if we zoom out for a second, what does this all mean for the listener who is holding that cup of coffee right now?
I think it means you can probably stop feeling guilty about your daily habit.
Huh. That is the best news I've heard all day.
But seriously, if we summarize the main pillars of this deep dive, it is pretty compelling. First, we have that 18% reduction in dementia risk for caffeinated coffee drinkers. That is a massive number when you apply it to a population of millions of aging adults.
Absolutely huge.
Second, we have the control group finding. Decaf didn't show the benefit. This tells us the magic is highly likely in the caffeine itself.
Sorry again to the decaf drinkers out there.
And third, the sweet spot. You don't need to overdo it. Moderate consumption, that 2 to 3 cups for coffee, 1 to 2 for tea, is where the data looks the absolute best.
It is amazing how often moderation turns out to be the real scientific answer. It's kind of boring, but it's true.
It is. The body likes homeostasis. It likes balance.
You know, it makes me think about how we view health hacks today. We are always looking for some exotic superfood or some incredibly expensive supplement online. But here, we have this humble little bean processed in hot water that most of us are already drinking anyway, and it turns out to be one of the most powerful tools for long-term brain health we have.
It's hiding in plain sight. And the fact that this study spans 43 years reminds us that health is a long game. It is not about what you do for 1 week in January. It's about what you do consistently, decade after decade.
Consistency is king. And speaking of consistency, this study adds such a rich layer to my own morning routine. I'm not just waking up anymore. I'm armoring up my brain.
That's a great way to put it, armoring up.
Before we wrap up, I have one final thought I want to throw out there. We have been talking a lot about the chemical side of things, the caffeine, the polyphenols, but I am thinking about what you said regarding that sweet spot and the nonlinear curve.
Okay, what about it?
Well, we live in a culture that inherently thinks more is better. If one vitamin pill is good, 2 are better. If a 30-minute workout is good, a grueling 2-hour workout is better. But this study clearly shows that the brain thrives on the right amount of stimulation, not the maximum amount.
That is a profound observation, actually.
And it just makes me wonder, if caffeine is this amazing tool for cognitive protection, is it possible that the ritual of it is part of the magic too?
What do you mean?
The consistency of sitting down, having that warm cup, taking a quiet moment before the chaos of the day starts. Maybe the brain needs that rhythm and that predictability just as much as it needs the caffeine molecule itself.
The interplay between daily ritual and biology. That is certainly something to think about. It's hard to separate the two in real life.
Something for you to mull over with tomorrow morning's cup. That is it for this deep dive into the caffeinated brain. Thanks for joining us as we unpack the data, and we will catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.